Hello, everyone. I'm gonna give a couple seconds just for everyone to come through. And then while we're waiting, if someone that's already in wouldn't mind testing out that they can see and hear me, so if you don't mind either raising your hand or putting it on the chat, that'd be great. Thank you so much. I see a couple hands. I appreciate you all. Great. So I think we should go ahead and get started. So first of all, thank you for being here. We're excited to be back with the second workshop of our Meet the Navy SysCom series. Last time you got to meet and learn from NAVSEA and NAVFAC, and today we're excited to have NAVSEA and SSP, or Naval Sea Systems Command and Strategic Systems Programs, which, although not technically a SysCom, does hold SBIR and STTR funding. So before I introduce our speakers, I'd like to just talk a little bit about Connect, our program and partnership for those of you who are new. If you are not new and you've seen our workshops before, just bear with me for a second. So Connect is a San Diego nonprofit that aims to help entrepreneurs scale through our different programs. We've been around for, I think, 35 years. We actually have a new program I'm very excited about. It's a workshop series called Capital Insights. There's been 2 so far. And these series are covering topics related to financing your startup. I've seen the last 2 and they're great. They're not put on by me, but I highly recommend them from any and all entrepreneurs. So if you're curious about those or any other Connect programming, please feel free to check out our website for more information at connect.org. And now for our program. SBIR Connect. So SBIR Connect is a Connect program, but it was created through our partnership with NIWC Pacific under NAVWAR. NAVWAR is Naval Information Warfare Systems Command, and it is one of the Navy System Commands or SysComs. And it is through this partnership that we hope to bring more awareness to the SBIR and STTR programs, specifically the Navies, and help foster relationships between government and industry. It is also because of this partnership that we can have these type of workshops for you, as well as the office hours and videos that we've put out. So with that, just 2 quick updates. 1, the Navy's open topics will be pre-releasing June 15th. So don't forget to set a calendar reminder for that. There's also more information on this at NavySIBR.com. I can post that link for you guys on the chat as well. And then update number 2. We have created a NAVWAR SBIR specific website for you all. We're pretty excited about that. Still working on some stuff, but I'll share the link for that as well on the chat. So now for our speakers. We have 3 different SBIR and STTR program managers with us today. So I'm very excited about that. Thank you guys for being here. So first one, Shadi Azum, the NAVWAR SBIR and STTR program manager. If you've come to our workshops before, you've probably seen him. He is just going to be doing a brief overview on SysComs or system commands. He's not doing a presentation on his command yet. He will be in the future. But for our presentations today, we have Jason Schroefner. He is the SBIR and STTR program manager at NAVSEA, or the Naval Sea Systems Command, and Michael Pirrett, the SBIR and STTR program manager at SSP, or Strategic Systems Program. So very excited to have you all. Thank you so much for being here and for sharing more information about your programs and commands. So with that, I think we should go ahead and get started. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So Shadi, please show your face and welcome. Thank you so much.
Wait, but hello, everybody. Gretel's right. I become a little too comfortable in these webinars, but I'm Shadi Azum. I am the SBIR STTR program manager at NAVWAR, the Naval Information Warfare Systems Command. I just had 2 slides just to set the stage as part of the series that Gretel introduced, basically kind of showing and discussing how we as individual Navy entities or commands can actually work together. I don't think the slides might be showing up. I will pause for a second. Perfect. Awesome. Thanks, Gretel. Okay, so just again, 2 slides. First thing, just to point out and set the stage. So every system command or syscom, like myself and Jason from like NAVSEA, for example, we have our own respective SBIR and SCTR funding. And that budget, of course, varies year to year. If you drill down on the specifics, you'll know that SBIR and SCTR is a tax on our own extramural RDT&E or research and development testing and engineering programs. So that, of course, varies from year to year, and so does our budget, since the tax is relative to that. Along those same lines, because we each have our own specific pot or set of funds, each one of the commands or Navy syscoms does have our own respective program manager, like myself for NavWar, Jason from NAVSEA, Mike from SSP. So it's all led by a program manager, and we each have our own like support teams that you might or might not have contacted with in the past, or you might be will in the future. Next thing, just to kind of keep in mind too, we each have our own respective capability needs and gaps, and those are fed into the topics that you see on the DoD, SBIR, and SCTR website. So we execute our budget on those gaps. And I think that's why we as the Navy have a huge amount of success in transitioning initiatives, is because each and every one of our projects stems from a need or a gap that we're willing to transition post SBIR funds that have elapsed. If you'd like information or contact information, I should say, about each one of the program managers, including us, we are actually located on the hyperlink that's shown here on this slide. It will take you directly to the NavySBIR.com website, which has who the program managers are across the different Navy entities that actually have SBIR, SCTR funding, as well as our contact information. Next slide, please. And this slide just focuses on how we collaborate with each other. I've been in this position for about 7-8 years, I think. I've lost count after 5, but I think the reason why I stay so long is because we are very tight-knit as a Navy whole. And what that means is like we meet regularly. We're able to touch base with each other regularly across the syscoms. And have some potential synergies with each other. We meet once a month, for example, to regularly discuss policies or updates to the program. So I think that's a really critical piece, especially if there are some shared projects or we'd like to collaborate with one another. And those are actually shown, or what those opportunities include are shown here in this very last bullet. So there are 3 ways that we've touched base with other commands within the Navy with respect or within the context of SBIR, SCTR. The first one is sometimes if there is an alternate transition partner, like a different program that could be applicable in a different command, we are able to foster that collaboration with each other. Second, if you see any one of our topics, usually they're very atomic, so it's really specific to a specific command. But you will see in some occasions, and probably with the open topics coming up, is that there is some shared collaboration or shared commands that will own a topic specifically. And then last but not least, one thing that I think we do like on behind the scenes is we are able to touch base with each other and share how we run our own programs and our own commands. And that sometimes lends its way to sharing operations or sharing tools or resources that we might have. So those are all 3 different, I'd say, pillars or paths that we take that kind of fortify and showcase the strength that we have across the Navy SBIR entities. That being said, I do want to also echo Gretel's gratitude to Mike and Jason for showing up today and showcasing their commands. And with that being said, thank you very much.
Thank you, Shadi. I appreciate you always showing up as well. For those of you who are new, Shadi is the reason why this partnership exists. So we're very thankful to him. So now with that, I'm going to go ahead and introduce Jason, who is the NAVSEA SBIR and SDTR program manager. Thanks to government computers not interacted with Zoom, you won't be able to see his face, but that is his voice, and I can attest that that is Jason. So I will be sharing the slides. Please let me know if you see them. I also forgot to say that the questions will be read and answered at the very end of the webinar. So if any questions come up throughout the presentations, feel free to put them in the Q&A. So with that, Jason, please say hello.
Hello. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you okay. I'm going to mute myself and share your slides in 1 second.
Fantastic. Yes, and as Gretel mentioned, because of the wonderful NMCI environment that I'm forced to work in, I can't see the screen. I don't know what you guys are looking at, and I can't see anything, so I'm doing strictly vocal here, so hopefully we don't have many glitches. But if we do, just interrupt and say, hey, you're looking at the wrong slide.
I think we are good, and we're starting with your very first slide.
Okay, excellent. Again, I'm Jason Schrepfer. I'm the SBIR and STTR program manager for Naval Sea Systems Command. And it really is me, it's not AI. You'll notice on the bottom of the first slide there, that email address is different than what you'll see on the Navy website if anybody ever goes there and looks for a point of contact. That is my real email address. It's not an unmonitored account. So if you need to get a hold of me, that's the way to do it. I think we're going to go through the first couple of slides fairly quickly because they're more generic. You know, what is SBIR and STTR? So we'll just kind of blow through those, and then we'll get into some specifics on Sea Systems Command. Slide 2, please. Okay, just kind of a recap. SBIR's been around for what, 41 years now. STTR, the sister program, has been around for 31 years. The only real difference between the two is that the STTR, of course, requires that the small business partners with a research institution to conduct at least 30% of the effort. Shadi mentioned all of the different SysComs that participate within Navy. There are 8 of us, and we do work pretty closely together. We're starting to broaden that out a little bit more and work more closely together, which is fantastic, sharing lessons learned and good ideas across the entire agency. So that's been really helpful. Within NAVSEA, because we're one of the largest SysComs, we had to further break the program up into smaller chunks. We have what were called program executive offices, and those are basically the groups within NAVSEA that manage different platforms of ships. So there's PEO aircraft carriers, PEO submarines, for example. So we have 6 total, I'll call them portfolios, under my purview within NAVSEA. And we'll get into these a little bit more detail here in a few minutes, but just so everyone's aware, we have 6 different portfolios. I have a government lead that runs each one of those portfolios that report directly to me. And like I said, we have the 5 PEOs, and then within the command, we also have directorates. So we have one person that kind of oversees all of the directorates combined together. Go ahead to slide 3, please. Again, just a little more, you know, elementary school level education on the program. It is 3 phases. We, as program managers, Shadi, Mike, and I, are responsible for phase 1 and phase 2. The ultimate goal of the program, however, is to get to phase 3, which is commercialization or transitioning your projects into Navy use, into a program of record. Once it gets to that point, SBIR funding is no longer allowed to be used, so it's no longer part of our management. We do assist, and we'll you know, teach seminars on how to get to that point, and we'll work with the contracting officers to make sure that they're understanding the rules and doing what they are supposed to be doing. But once we hit phase 3, it's kind of it's into the regular acquisition cycle and out of the SBIR managed world, so to speak. The nice thing about that is all of the restrictions that apply in phase 1 and phase 2, as far as how large a company can be, what are the funding limits and time durations on contracts, things like that, they no longer apply in phase 3. So that's my goal, is to get you to that point. But everything up until that point is, you know, where we work very closely together between the companies, the research institutions, my office, and the TPOCs, the technical community. We're all four kind of working together to ultimately get to that commercialization piece. Slide 4. All right, this is where we start to get into the specifics about my command. As the name implies, Sea Systems, we are responsible for everything that either floats or goes under the water. So that goes everywhere from, the big deck aircraft carriers to the submarines to the unmanned vehicles. If it floats or swims in the water, it belongs to NAVSEA. If it flies, it's NAVAIR. And then the smaller commands like SSP and NAVWAR, we all kind of combine to make one thing. But NAVSEA is, I believe, as far as personnel goes, it's the largest SysCom. We have somewhere around 85,000 military and civilian employees worldwide. We have 42 activities or warfare centers, shipyards, regional maintenance centers. So 42 of those across the globe. The map of the U.S. you see there, that's just some of the main sites. So that's, you can see it's mostly clustered in the Middle Eastern region in and around DC. Obviously, that's where I'm stationed, is Washington, DC. And then San Diego is obviously the biggest, or one of the biggest Navy bases in the world. So we have a pretty big footprint out there as well, down in Florida, up in Seattle, and then the shipyards kind of scattered throughout. But collectively, our job is to design, build, buy, and maintain ships, submarines, and the combat systems that go into the ships and submarines. So that's kind of, in a nutshell, what NAVSEA is. Next slide, please. And this is the command structure that I talked to a little bit earlier. You'll see down the left side of your screen in the red box there, the program offices, the PEOs. You can see there ships, unmanned and small combatants, that's PEO USC. 3 of these are actually kind of grouped together to make team submarines. So that's the attack submarines, strategic subs, and undersea warfare. And we also have PEO IWS, integrated warfare systems. And they deal primarily with all of the combat systems that go across multiple platforms, like the radar systems, sonars, communication systems, things like that that are used by multiple platforms. And then finally, aircraft carriers. And then the horizontal red box towards the bottom of the screen there, that is the headquarters directorates like cybersecurity, contracts, the comptroller directorate. We don't typically get as many SBIR projects out of those because they're not really focused on R&D as much, but some of them do participate, like CO5, for example. And then the CO7 undersea warfare. So we have 5 people that handle that vertical column, program offices on the left, 5 different portfolios on that side, and then the one that goes horizontally across the screen, we have 1 portfolio manager that oversees all of that. Next slide, please. So this is kind of how we're structured. At the very, very top, we call it the Executive Committee. That is the Executive Director of Naval Sea Systems Command, and every participating or stakeholder organization within the command that plays in the program, they're represented by either their flag officer or their SES. So they basically just provide me with overarching guidance on the program, things that they'd like to see. And then probably the most important piece of what they do is they review all of our topics every year, and they approve them to make sure that they're meeting command requirements prior to me submitting them to Navy and then on to DOD to get published in the broad agency announcements. So within the box, see me up there top and center, and then across the bottom of the 6 folks that I've been talking about quite a bit so far, my technology managers. So as I said, each one of those little buckets, there's a government lead that kind of runs the portfolio and makes sure that it aligns to the PEO and their mission, as well as they work with my office to make sure that we're meeting all of the requirements of the SBIR and STTR program. And then we're also working together with the programs of record to ensure that we have a transition path. Each one of these teams is supported by, depending on their size, between 2 and 5, we call them coordinators, as contractor support folks. Within my office, we have, I don't know, 15 or 20 support contractors working in my office to kind of help keep the train on the tracks and keep all of the pieces moving forward. But this is our structure as a whole. Any questions for me, beyond this meeting, my email address is on the first slide, or you can reach out to my deputy, Vince, and we'd be more than happy to either set up follow-on training, participate in any events, or just answer any general questions that you might have. Next slide, please, number 7. When we're planning our topics and trying to figure out what SBIR and STTR projects we want to work on, our goal is to make sure that we meet a couple of requirements. First and foremost is the NAVSEA campaign plan. Yeah, I can never say that correctly. The NAVSEA campaign plan, because that is a document that governs the priorities and the mission focus areas within NAVSEA. So we make sure we align to that. At a top level, it's delivering combat power. So making sure we have the most effective ships and submarines and systems in the world available when they're needed. And then obviously digital capability has been a very big push in the most recent years, AI, things like that, cyber, and then just building a team between government and industry and academia that can fight and win. So that's kind of the NAVSEA focus. Above that is the National Defense Strategy, which is laid out by the Pentagon every couple of years. What is the Navy as a whole focused on? So when we're writing topics, we make sure that we align them to those two documents. And then on the bottom of the screen there, we also, like I said earlier, we work with the Target Transition Office, the folks that would ultimately install your system into either a larger system or get it into the fleet in some way, shape, or form. So we work with them before we ever put pen to paper. We're talking to them to figure out, okay, what is it exactly that you need from us? And we don't like to get to the end of phase 2 and be surprised by success. By that, I mean, you get to that point and everybody goes, yeah, this technology is fantastic. I love what these guys are doing. The small business out of the middle of the US is just great. Now what do we do? That is way too late in the game to start planning. But some people do that, and then they have to wait for 4 or 5 years to get the funding that's required to continue development and finalize development and get through testing and the V&V process, anything else that we need to militarize your systems, shock and vibe tests, any number of things before we can actually put it on a ship. So we're talking to these people from the day we start thinking about an idea for a topic all the way through the end of phase 2, where hopefully we've got all of the ducks lined up by the time we get there, where we can just pass you off and then hand you from the SBIR program over to them. So that's kind of our philosophy. In order to do that, anybody that's participated in the program before will tell you that sometimes a phase 1 and a phase 2 is not enough time, not enough money. You need a little bit more. So we do have a couple of tools at our disposal that we use to make sure that the technology is ready for prime time when we get to that point. Slide 8, please. We do a lot of phase 2 reachbacks. Essentially what this is, because by law, we're allowed to issue 2 phase 2 contracts for every company, for every topic. They're not supposed to run concurrently, but we are allowed to do a second one. Sometimes the Navy's just not ready to absorb the tech because it's so far ahead of the game that when we get to the end of a phase 2, we don't have a choice but to put it on the shelf temporarily. But we do have the capability to reach back to that prior topic at any point in time, whenever funding aligns up or whenever the host system is ready for it, whatever the case may be. So as a reach back, that's just going back to an older topic and adding more funds to it. There's some technical speak in here as far as how to do this, depending on the amount of funding that you received in the past. And then with escalation, our limits go up every year, so we may be able to just put money directly on that project, or we may have to do what we call a CRP, a commercialization readiness project. If that's the case, I require, at least me, and I think most of the other PMs do it similarly, I require a little bit more buy-in from the program office. I make them show up at the table with their checkbook and match what I'm going to put in. But those are the 2 types of subsequent phase twos that we can do. Next slide. Yeah, I already kind of started talking about this one, CRP. But the purpose of this and the reach back is just to give you a little bit more development time to kind of finalize the project before we can transition it. And then depending on the level of funding that you received in the past, we may or may not require matching money from an outside source. Next slide, transition requirements. I talked about a little bit of transition earlier, phase 3, about the size limits and the funding restrictions going away in phase 3. One of the biggest things that I usually end up arguing within the government about is with my contracting officers, because they are raised and trained from the day they become a junior contracting officer all the way up until they become a branch head. Their entire career is focused on, you have to compete because that's how you get the best value for the government, and the government must have data rights. Those two things are just instilled in every contracting officer that you're ever going to run across. And since we're such a small program in the grand scheme of things, most of them either aren't aware of the authorizations or the authorities that are inherent in SBIR, or they don't want to believe it. But you do not have to compete for phase 3. You've already met your competition requirements. So sole source awards are justified. You don't need J&As or any of that kind of stuff. You can just go straight to it and they can do a sole source contract. And with data rights, when you guys develop something, the rights are yours. You keep all of that for a 20-year period. And we're not allowed to make that a condition of award. So the rights stay with the company that developed it. And then another key piece is that first bullet up there is that the government must award a phase 3 contract to the SBIR or STTR firm that developed the technology to the greatest extent practicable. Now that little phrase at the end, the greatest extent practicable, just means that you are still in business, you're willing to do the work, and you're able to do the work. If you meet those 3 things, then we have to give you the award. But we're not allowed to compete it or give it to somebody else. If we do want to do that, we have to get a waiver signed out by the SBA, the Small Business Administration, authorizing us to do so. And if we do not get that waiver, and you find out that we gave your award to somebody else, you can notify the SBA, and they have the authority to step in and put a stop to that contract that we issued and tell us to do it the right way. So these are 3 very important pieces that most people aren't aware of. Most of the small businesses are, because this is kind of the bread and butter, but most of the contracting offices are not aware of this. And I tend to explain this quite a bit. Next slide, transitions. Like I said, that's the ultimate goal, and Navy is by far the best. This is a slide that I stole from our boss, the director of Navy programs over at ONR. And this is kind of a summary of the last 5 years. I think this was FY18 through FY22, Navy-wide. So we did issue over 3,400 funding actions on over 1,000 contracts, which equaled more than $4 billion in transition funds, which is a pretty sizable amount. And then I'm going to break it down a little bit further, go to the next slide. And this shows you how the Navy stacks up against the rest of DoD. At the very, very top up there is my office, the NAVSEA. Right below us, coming in a close second, is NAVAIR, and then all of the smaller SysComs. But if you look at the very bottom where it says the rest of DoD programs, even the big ones like the F-35, their numbers are paltry compared to what the Navy does. Navy does over 50% of all DoD transitions, and DoD does over 50% of all federal government transitions. So if you just do the back of the napkin math, the Navy is responsible for about a quarter of all SBIR transitions across the entire federal government. So DoD is the best at it, Navy is the best in DoD, and as much as I wish I could brag and say NAVSEA is the best in the Navy, on the chart I am, but I think that that's just because I have a bigger staff and I have dedicated people that know how to look for this stuff. I think my sister syscoms do a fantastic job of transitioning as well. They're just not able to find it as easily as my team is. But that being said, there is no real requirement for people to report this information to us, so we have to go out and dig for it. So our numbers are probably much, much, much better than this. We're just not aware of it. And I think that's all I had. So I will look forward to questions at the end. And I wasn't paying attention to the clock at all. So Gretel, hopefully I didn't chew up too much time.
No, this was perfect. Thank you so much. I also want to just emphasize that the reason why the Navy is transitioning as well is because they have program managers like Shadi, Mike, and Jason that really focus on that and do a lot of work to ensure that your work is transitioning. So thank you to all three of you and all the other PMs within the DON. All right, so like I said, questions in the Q&A, but for now we're gonna go ahead and welcome Mike Pirrett. He is the SBIR and STTR program manager at SSP, or Strategic Systems Program. So welcome, Mike. I can see you, I'm sure I can hear you, and I'll let you go ahead and share your slides.
Thank you, Gretel. So yes, I am Mike Pirrett, like she said, Strategic Systems Programs, also known as Super Secret Program. I get that a lot from people because we are hidden in the background a lot of times. People don't really know what we do. And there's a reason for that, because we do all nuclear related stuff. And there's a challenge with, bad actors. So we got to make sure to keep our information secure and protect it from other countries that may be taking that stuff from us. I want to caveat that SSP does not have any STTRs. It's mostly due to the university participation. Even though SBIRs, we have some partner with universities, is not a requirement for an SBIR. We just don't have STTRs because we don't want university requirement because of the security issues most of them have. All my topics are ITAR restricted, and it's very hard for universities to participate when the ITAR restriction is in place also. So we'll go through my slides. So I'm not going to focus on the SBIR since Jason, covered that pretty well. More about the command overall. So SSP is coming into a new era. For the longest time, we've been doing sustainment of our systems, and now we're just going back into R&D mode. And now we have a new mission statement and vision to go along with that. So we are to be the nation's premier provider of cost-effective, safe, and secure sea-based strategic deterrent solutions, and grow the intellectual capital to deliver sea-based strategic deterrent for 2084. We're going to be revamping our website and all to go against that SBSD 2084. So pretty soon you'll see all new information and all to support that. But some examples of that include the Triton 2 missile system. So we provide approximately 7% of our nation's deployed nuclear deterrent triad. Submarine launched ballistic missile weapon system on the high class submarines, and will be the weapon system for the follow-on Columbia class. And the new conventional prompt strike program, which designs, builds, and sustains an evolving multi-service hypersonic capability. We provide continuous 24/7, 365 days a year coverage. Our vision to deter strategic attack by providing credible and affordable nuclear and non-nuclear strategic solutions to the warfighter to underwrite the security of our nation and our allies through 2084. Within the coming decade, we'll sustain and support the D5 life extension missile system. We will implement the shipboard system integration in a timely, effective, and affordable manner. The Common Missile Compartment Program will remain on schedule to support the Columbia-class SSBN and UK's Dreadnought-class SSBN programs. We have the path forward to provide submarine-launched ballistic missile capability through the life of the Columbia-class SSBNs, and we will provide and achieve an integrated nuclear weapons safety and security capability baseline and rapid response process to counter emerging threats. So SSP is interesting in comparison to NAVSEA. So our admiral has 3 hats. So we report to the Chief of Naval Operations on nuclear matters for nuclear safety and security. Also, report directly to the Assistant Secretary of the Navy for RDA, and as a direct reporting program manager on matters pertaining to the acquisition and sustainment of the Trident II strategic weapon system. Additionally, we directly report to SecNav on the UK's use of the Trident II, and we have a strong relationship with the commander of US STRATCOM. So all over the place, you see it and relate all to nuclear related actions. So we've been providing nuclear deterrent for over 60 years. And this is just some of the life cycle going through. I'm not going to talk about all of that. We're currently involved in production of the new fleet ballistic missile submarine, the Columbia class, which is under Jason's purview. And that's supposed to be in service throughout the 2080s. And with all this R&D going on now, like I said before, we were mostly in sustainment and maintenance mode. Now we're doing all R&D, so we're looking at SBIRs to integrate. This is like a great time for us right now. Our budget's going up to support that. And there's opportunities for SBIRs to go across the board. So we have 6 lines of business that touch on briefly. So nuclear weapon security. So that assures the security of nuclear weapons in US Navy custody. Strategic weapon systems, maintains and extends the life of the Trident II, the nation's primary strategic deterrent. The Naval Treaty Implementation Program assures the Department of the Navy the compliance of all applicable arms control treaties and agreements. The SSGN attack weapon system provides and supports converted Ohio-class submarines that deploy Tomahawk missiles and other payloads. Emerging missions provides rapid and cost-effective expansion of submarine-based capabilities as fill validated joint warfighting gaps under the new triad. And finally, the conventional prompt strike develops non-nuclear conventional prompt strike hypersonic weapons. And like I said, SBIRs, we're trying to fit it in most of these things, like Navy Treaty Implementation Program. We aren't going to utilize that, but you know, weapon security, strategic weapon systems, hypersonics, we're looking across the board for all of that. So we're want to understand the full life cycle issue here. We do cradle to grave across the board in our branches, all the way to R&D to operational support. SSP handles it all within our branches. So it's pretty much the same person handles the life cycle of their area. So it's interesting comparing NAVSEA, which breaks apart the different branches and PEOs, and it's just all under us. We're a small system, but we're spread pretty much all on the missile. So different compartments of the missile, different components, and then hypersonics is what we're actually focused on. And we're trying to fit in SBIRs all across the board here. So we are headquartered at the Washington Navy Yard, but we have offices throughout the US, and then we utilize NAVSEA warfare centers as technical experts. We have strategic weapons facilities in Georgia and Washington State. And like I said, we have a detachment in the UK, so we handle all of their nuclear weapons also. And then I'm not going to talk much on this. This is just generic SBIR timeline. Difference from other syscoms for phase 2, we do $1.2 million. I'd like to add on also that for sequential subsequent phase 2, some firms that have been selected from SBIRs from other agencies have been selected but not funded. I want to point out that you will not be eligible for a phase 2 because technically you never awarded an SBIR to get a phase 2. So I've had firms come up to me and say, well, we've been selected not funded. Can you give us funding? And I'm like, technically no, because you never got a contract award. So I just want to point that out as a, a reach back, you would not be eligible. And yes, so just some quote from our rear admiral or vice admiral, sorry. And then I'm going to share, let's see, what we will be changing are, when we go to 2084, we'll be revamping all our website and stuff like that to look like this. So that is all I had. Sorry for the quick thing. I think Jason pretty much covered the SBIRs in general. So I think he did a good job. So I didn't want to, cover it over again. Over.
Thanks, Mike. Much appreciated. And I did share the links to both SSP and NAVSEA websites. So it looks like SSP will get a new look soon. Mike, if you don't mind, stop sharing your, there you go. Thank you. All right, so I think we can go ahead and move on to some questions. So first of all, once again, thank you so much for your presentations. I think these are super helpful, not just for small businesses, but also for me to understand more about what each other command is focused on. One of the first questions, and anyone who wants to take it, please go ahead. And we get this question a lot. Are these grants or contracts for all of your different programs?
Contracts.
Thank you.
Yep.
And there is other SBIR agencies that do grants. The DoD is not one of those agencies, but there is, I believe, 11 other federal agencies that participate in SBIR and STTR. So with that said, it is non-dilutive funding, if that's where that question came from. Are there any opportunities within the SBIR and STTR program for nonprofits?
I think based on the eligibility rules, they can be a subcontractor, but they can't be a prime.
So they can be a subcontractor to a prime for the award. Got
Right.
it.
So the primary recipient is a small business, but then they can subcontract that out.
Thank you. And there is, if you're more interested in eligibility and what that looks like, there is a great set of eligibility facts at NAVSEA.com and also SBIR.gov. Also in our new website, NAVSEA.com. So I'll make sure I'll add those links right now. Another question that came through the registration was, if I had, and I'm just gonna use I for now, if I had received a phase 1 award, let's say with Shadia NAVWAR, is there an opportunity for me to get a phase 2 with either Mike or Jason?
Yes.
Definitely.
I've got phase 2s from Air Force, Army, NASA. We can go across any agency that has an SBIR, we are allowed to leverage.
In fact, I just gave Shadi one of mine last week.
Thank you, Jason.
You're welcome.
Great. I would like to continue this conversation because I think Jason and Mike, you guys also talked about, and Shadi talked about collaborating with each other. Do commands ever work on a topic together from the very beginning? So not just passing it on depending on the phase.
Yeah, I'll jump in there. Yes, this year specifically, because we're doing an open topic, all of the SysComs were involved in selecting that. So we're doing a broad Navy-wide topic that is titled, Logistics in a Contested Environment. And then within that, we have more specifics based on the SysCom. But everybody was involved in that. And then depending on the SysCom, like I work with NAVSEA a lot because, they own aircraft, I own aircraft carriers. So there's a lot of cross-pollination there. So we do a lot of joint work relating to aircraft and their landing platforms. But in other areas, we work with other SysComs on, wherever there might be cross-applicability, we do that all the time.
Thank you. Anything else before I move to the next question? No. All right. So this question says, we are working on wave to energy conversion. Who would be the best person to talk about this, or which command? So renewable energy and energy resiliency. I can answer a little. The word energy, I think the DOE would actually be a good other organization. They have their own SBIR and STTR program.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that they understand that we don't take unsolicited ideas. We put out our gaps in our DAAs, and if you have the experience, I'm contracting your experience for innovation in something new. So I understand you might have a great idea, but that's not the intention of the SBIR program.
I saw Jason talk a little, so
Right.
Jason.
Yeah, I was going to say within NAVSEA, we do have the Fleet Energy Research and Development Program. We do a lot of work with like lithium-ion batteries for the unmanned systems. So we do a lot of different things with energy, depending on what type of energy you're talking about. Nuclear energy probably wouldn't be in my bailiwick, but like batteries, solar, things like that, it might land in my lap. But then, like Mike said too, it's, you know, we could help put you in contact with somebody to talk to, but it wouldn't necessarily be IR related, because, you know, everything we do is topic driven and we develop the topics.
Yes, and I'll go ahead and add to that too. The reason why you see such a big percentage on success to transition from the Navy is because of, from the very beginning, the way they do it is there has to be a specific need, which they express via what it's called the topic. So industry is not allowed to participate in topic development, not even contractors. So there's only very few agencies that have truly open topics where you can kind of share what you're working on. One of those is the NSF. So if that's more of what you're thinking, then I would definitely check out those other agencies. One of the questions is the open topic a webinar or info published on the website? It is. All the information that is available as of now is at NavySBIR.com for the Navy open topics. I did put a link to that takes you directly to the page, but you're just gonna have to wait till June 15th to see what topics come out. So I'm gonna answer that live. Okay, this one I think is to Shadi specifically. So can you talk about the cybersecurity areas of interest?
I would hate to ask for a clarifying question, but I guess so. Cybersecurity is a realm, or I guess a dedicated program office that we have within NAVWAR. In terms of like areas of interest, it does range, I would say, to the anonymous attendee that I'm afraid I don't have the name for. Oh, network availability and reliance. Okay, thank you. I would say stay tuned, just in the interest of time, stay tuned for my briefing from my command, because I will dive into that specifically, but it is an area of interest within NAVWAR.
Thank you. And then also a general tip, if you go to SBIR.gov and go to the award data, which SBIR.gov hosts all of the data for all of the agencies that participate in SBIRs, they do have a keyword search. So you could utilize that to see which previous awards have been given related to whatever you're working on and what your technology is, to see what agency and what command might be a good fit for you. Someone asked if we can email those links after. Yes, we will be emailing the links and the recording later on. We got a lot of questions, and this one is for anyone regarding AI. Is there any interest in each of your commands in AI? Have you done any topics in the past regarding AI that you want to share or can share about? And I'm keeping it broad because we received 8 different questions regarding AI.
Yes, NAVSEA has done quite a few AI related, AI and ML have kind of been the buzzwords for the last 4 or 5 years. So we've done quite a few topics on that over the last 5-6 years. And I'd also like to mention, if you go to NavySBIRSearch.com, you can punch in keywords and do searches, and it'll pull up all previous topics. So that's a good opportunity for you to network, potentially build partnerships with other companies that work in the same space, and find out. You could get the technical points of contact off of those topics from the past, and call them up and see what the current state of the art is, and maybe do your elevator pitches directly to them.
Thank you. Mike, Shadi, anything to add?
So you can do the same for me, but you can't find the people's names online. So you can go to reach out to me or the SBIR email address, and then I forward, like I said earlier, we have to be careful of letting bad actors know who works on what technology and not become targets. So those names aren't made public until you're actually contracted, but I can facilitate getting questions and answers, and if they want to reach out to you, they can.
And then if any of you want to just connect with Mike or Jason and can't find their email, you can email me and I'll forward that information as well. Shadi, you had started speaking.
Yeah, no, I was saying we did try to infuse some of the topics that come out of NAVWAR with AI or machine learning. I know one recently we did was one of our program offices uses, quote, help desk tickets. And so it was using that to better assess where to bin them for addressing them. But it spans the range. So if you take a look at some of our past topics, whether it's NAVSEA.com or SBIR.gov, it does show, I think specifically, or calls out NAVWAR has in the past incorporated AI, just depends on the application.
Thank you. Next question says, are there any programs in your commands for satellites?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, so you're just gonna have to rewatch the slides for Shadi's, but
Yeah.
the answer is yes.
Yeah, not the actual satellites, but satellite comms is a big one for us.
Thank you. This other question is a little bit more general, but what would be or what are the best system commands to deal with life-saving products such as casualty evacuation equipment, airway maintenance devices, and I can't read the other one, but would that be a fit within SBIR and STTR for your respective commands?
It would. For casualty evacuation, I would actually refer you to the Marine Corps. Trying to think of who else would be.
Yeah, and I think
there's certain components of it within NAVSEA, but on a broader scale, I think the Marine Corps would be probably the best suited.
Yep, I also think for LiveSci, or more specific LiveSci and health, there is other agencies that their whole area of responsibility is that. So you might want to look into the NIH possibly. I think they're more closely related to that as well. Any programs related to veterans health or clinical research, I'm gonna go ahead and say that the NIH would probably be one of the only agencies that would focus on clinical trials as well. So it might be good for you to check that agency out, unless any of you guys have anything else for the DON.
Cool. Not part of my program.
No.
Great. I think I'll do a quick read through of whatever questions, but I think that's it. Oh, one question that we did receive that we get often is there any specific perk to being woman-owned or veteran-owned for SBIR and STTR applications?
They don't get preferential, I guess, treatment, but they do fall under small businesses that would be able to apply. I think too, like every command has what they call like an Office of Small Business Programs that actually does capture those metrics. So I do think that we have to have a minimum threshold to have those statistics in place. Sorry, Gretel, and one thing I forgot to mention that might be a helpful tip, but if you're ever curious about which agency might be actually tied or might be doing the work that you guys are thinking about, you being small businesses, you can go to SBIR.gov's website. They actually do have a keyword search tool. And if you put in the keywords that are related to what you're doing, like veterans health or clinical research, it should pull which agency has made awards based on those keywords, and that might be appropriate sort of gateway to find out which SBIR agency to contact. Sorry.
Thank you. I think I saw Jason's bubble light up.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, Shadi hit the nail on the head. There's no preference given, but we do have a pretty extensive outreach program, and we've been trying to increase the participation numbers for women-owned, veteran-owned, minority-owned, a lot of the underrepresented demographics. So I have an entire outreach team that spends, every waking moment just scouring the countryside, going to events, talking to people. So we can reach out and provide training and hook you up with local resources and things like that to kind of help you out. But yeah, once it comes to contract award, there's no differentiation.
Thank you. And thank you all for clarifying and answering these questions. That was the last question we had. So I think I'm going to give everyone a little bit of time left back. So 3-ish minutes. So thank you all for showing up today. Thank you for asking questions. Jason, Mike, and Shadi, thank you so much for being here and for giving us some of your time to share a little bit more about your commands and programs. We appreciate it. If any of the participants have any questions, please feel free to email me. It is gvonson@connect.org. So thank you all. I'm going to go ahead and end this call. So it'll be very awkward for a second, but everyone have a great day and thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.